Howdy, I'm glad you clicked on this video. As you can see, I'm going to be doing a theological critique of Helluva Boss, where I'm going to compare the show to real-life theology, seeing how it holds up. There's a lot to go over now, so let's get started. First things first, a few disclaimers. Why am I doing this? Well, you see, Helluva Boss is based off Christianity. That's obvious. But as a show, it makes a few changes to Christian teachings for the sake of entertainment, which I would not mind if it weren't for people starting to believe in the changes made. I've started to notice that some people are citing Helluva Boss, and more specifically the Lesser Key of Solomon, which Helluva Boss takes a lot of source material from, as being part of actual Christian teachings. And that is very concerning because those aren't true. So what I want to do is enlighten people on the real teachings, show them what is true and what is false, because the truth matters. And if you see someone being misdirected or they're falling for their own lies, you should guide them to the truth. I would also like to mention that I may be biased in my analysis. My understanding of the faith may differ from yours, so if it seems like I may have gotten anything incorrect or you wish to object to anything I say, feel free to do so in the comments down below. I should also say that I did not like the show. I found it very frustrating at times, so if it seems like I'm being too harsh or nitpicky, I apologize. At the end of the day, I'll try to keep my bias to a minimum and remain as objective as possible. Now that we got all the formalities out of the way, our first order of business is to figure out what denomination Helluva Boss is based on. Why is it important to figure out what denomination the show is based on? Well, I want to be fair to the show. If the show is based on Protestantism, I'm not going to judge it as a Catholic. If the show is based on Catholicism, I'm not going to judge it as a Protestant. Whatever branch the show is based on, I'm going to judge it on its own terms. Now, how do we figure out what branch of Christianity the show is based on? Well, you see, different branches have different elements and individuals and rules that are specific to that branch. And we can use that in order to filter out which branch of Christianity Helluva Boss is or isn't based on. Now note, I will only use evidence found within the show. I will not be using any external knowledge or information. I know that in my Hazbin Hotel versus Christianity video, I cited Vivian Madrano being Presbyterian as justification for why Hazbin Hotel was based on some sort of Protestant denomination. In this case, I will not. I would be adhering strictly to the show. Now, why do I think the show is based on Roman Catholicism? Two things. Dorks using bishops and Osmodeus. You see, Dorks in Season 2, it was shown that they were cloning bishops in masses. Now, Dorks, they're kind of dumb, but at the same time, they're not moronic. They can at least get the job done. Because earlier in that episode, where we see them cloning the bishops en masse, we see that they have caught several cryptids and other mythical creatures, showing that, hey, they can at least get the job done. They know what they're doing. They may not be good at it, but they at least have the foresight and knowledge to deal with the supernatural. So I believe that the fact that they're using bishops, I can infer that, hey, they have knowledge to conclude that, hey, we need bishops. Whether for exorcism or their holy authority, we need bishops. So using the fact that bishops are important within the show, we can exclude orthodoxy. So that leaves the Orthodox Church out, and a lot of Protestant denominations. But not all of them. There are some older Protestant denominations, such as Lutherans and the Church of England, those older Protestant denominations that still use bishops and have like a structured church, as well as the Catholic Church. So how do we figure out if it's an older Protestant branch or Roman Catholic? Simple. Osmodeus. You see, Osmodeus only ever shows up within the Book of Tobit. To my Protestant viewers, it may not be familiar with the Book of Tobit. That's because it does not show up within the Protestant Bible. You see, the Catholic Bible has more books that go into more elaboration on specific teachings and different tales. One of the books found in the Catholic Bible is the Book of Tobit, where Osmodeus makes multiple appearances as the main bad guy there. Now that we know that Osmodeus is in the show, we can conclude that it's not a Protestant denomination, and thus it must be Roman Catholic. Which is good for me because they record a lot of their stuff, and they have explanations for a lot of different things. Seriously, they write down everything. And what's even better is that A lot of extra biblical lore, such as vampires, succubi, werewolves, witches, they're based off Catholic folklore. So the Catholic Church had to deal with those ideas before. And thus, we have answers for those. So that's why I believe the show is based off Roman Catholicism. If you believe I missed something, feel free to comment it down below. Now that we know we're going to be using Roman Catholicism as our basis for our critiques, let's get started with the fundamentals. This section is mainly going to be me covering general world building and stuff where I want to get out of the way real quick so I don't have to repeat myself over and over again. First off, hell. In the show, if you're a bad person and you die, you get sent to hell, you get this new demonic form, and hell is seen as this Los Angeles-esque city. Which, compared to real life Los Angeles, hell might be better. But is hell actually like that? No. Best way to describe hell is the land of the dead. Now, I know there is debate about the exact terminology of hell. There's Gehenna, there's Hades, but for the sake of simplicity, let's just refer to hell. Hell is a place where death does its job. It is where those who died go. And what I mean by that is those who died but were not in the grace of God, and so they are properly dead. Like dead. Now sure, they're still in a somewhat state of aliveness because their souls still exist, but they are functionally dead. And because they are functionally dead, you can't domesticate hell. Hell is not a place you can control or shape to your own will. It is a place where you just have to deal with it. I should also mention that hell is not a physical place. Now yes, it is a place that does exist, but it's not a physical place you can just walk around in. As shown, I believe in the pilot episode, the little kid was able to go to hell. And it showed that, hey, this place is a physical realm. But in reality, hell is more of a spiritual plane. Now, what about the demons of hell? Demons don't actually reside in hell. That's a very popular misconception in not just the show, but other pop culture and media. Demons actually reside on Earth. How else could they tempt you? Because demons are still technically alive. Yes, they were banished from heaven for trying to rebel against God, but they're not dead yet. They still live. And so they're on Earth. And trust me on this, demons don't want to go to hell either. They know that hell is a terrible place that they don't want to go. But they know that since they rebelled against God and they are absolutely sinful creatures, they're going to get sent down there at the end times. It's just that their goal here on Earth is to drag us down with them. And speaking of end times, hell itself will be destroyed in the end times. As seen in Revelation chapter 20, verse 14. Hell will be thrown into the lake of fire. The best way to describe the lake of fire is total destruction. It is the fire pit where all sin, death, and every evil in the universe will be thrown into and destroyed. The lake of fire is a place where death goes to die. And hell, being a place where death does its job, will also be destroyed when thrown into the lake of fire at the end times. Think of the lake of fire as double hell. Now, what about the residents of hell, as shown in the show? Many demonic figures that we have conceptions of in our media and pop culture, they're not exactly biblical. Creatures such as imps, hellhounds, succubi, the Goetia, they're not really mentioned in the Bible. There's something about hounds of hell, but those are different things. Now, in Catholicism, there are iconography of imps and hellhounds. Just iconography. They're like ways of representing what demons do. Demons don't have a set form, nor a set species to them. Because demons are just evil spirits. They just are. They don't have a set form. So they don't really adopt the shape of imps, hellhounds, succubi. It's just that we've created these images in order to represent what they do. But at the same time, they're not limited to just one thing. Because as mentioned, demons don't have a true form. They are entirely spiritual entities, previously being angels that have been cast down. And in the show, it's alluded to that there's this rank system, where you have imps and hellhounds at the bottom, then you have hellborns, sinners, overlords, Goetia, seven deadly sins, and then the king. In reality, in real life, they don't really show to have some sort of ranking system. Now, Satan, he's the big bad, yes. He was the one who led all all the demons to rebel against God, and they eventually failed. There's a reason why he's the big bad. But ignoring him, other demons to each other, they don't really have a set rank or great distinction between each other. They're all just demons or devils. Oh, I should also mention, devils and demons, they're the same thing. In fact, the word demon is not mentioned in the Bible. The term devils and evil spirits are, though. It's just demons just came later. Where was I again? Oh, right. So there's not a great distinction between one demon from another. Sure, they have some that have different names and have different histories, but at the end of the day, they're all just demons. Lastly, oh my goodness, the Lesser Key of Solomon. Okay, Helluva Boss takes a lot of inspiration from the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is a grimoire that supposedly teaches you how to summon demons and make deals with them. I cannot stress this enough. It's not biblical. I've seen so many people actually cite the Lesser Key of Solomon in order to explain demonology, when in reality, it's not biblical. It's frustrating to see this because it shows that people don't actually care, or they're just parroting what others say. They see that Helluva Boss is based off Christianity. And they also see that Helluva Boss is using the Lesser Key of Solomon in order to explore different characters. And so they end up believing that Lesser Key of Solomon is actually based on Christianity. Now, sure, some of the demons are in Christianity, but the book itself is not doctrine to, I don't think, any Christian denominations. Especially not Catholicism. No, they would not tolerate that. And speaking of the demons in there, a lot of the demons mentioned in the Lesser Key of Solomon are not real. Think of Andrelphus, Stolas, Paimon. They're never mentioned in the Bible. We don't know if they exist. Could they exist? I don't know. But for as far as we can tell, we don't know if they exist. Now, demons do exist, but we don't know, like, a lot of their names. We only have, like, a handful of names. But the demons that we do know for sure do exist with proper names that appear in the Lesser Key of Solomon, they're either mischaracterized or exaggerated, flanderized versions of themselves. And it's frustrating because people are starting to take this book seriously when you should not. Don't take this book seriously. No, let me clarify. Don't try to summon demons. Please, for everything that is holy, don't try to summon demons. Like, seriously, don't try to use this book. But what I meant by seriously is that people think, oh, this is the actual source for Christian teachings. But it's not. Seriously, stop. Alright now. Now it's time for me to actually cover the show. And we're gonna start with Season 1. I would like to note that if there's an episode where there's not a whole lot I can talk about, I'm either gonna probably lump it up with another episode or just skip the episode because there's not much I can say about it. And the first episode we're gonna cover is Episode 1, Murder Family. And the first thing right off the bat I want to talk about is at the very beginning when Miss Mayberry did her murder-suicide and was sentenced to hell. She talked about how, oh, I had one bad day and now I'm stuck in hell forever. Lady, you committed a murder-suicide. You failed in the murder part, but you killed yourself because you were cheated on. Now, don't get me wrong. Being cheated on, really bad. I don't suggest people doing that. But if you were willing to kill someone over being cheated on, maybe you weren't exactly a good of a person as you thought you were. And that brings up a idea that's been stirring in my mind. Would someone like Miss Mayberry actually be considered good, or is she just well behaved? And what I mean by that is Miss Mayberry, prior to her killing herself, didn't have a reason to I say sin. Yeah, she didn't exactly have a reason to be bad, but at the same time, her environment was very cushy. It was very clean, and so she never really had to struggle. So the question is someone who is in a very well comfortable, very clean, very lawful place, and because of that place, they don't sin because sinning is just advantageous for them, are they considered good? Because if you were to compare someone who lives in a very dangerous and very hostile environment, yet still chooses to be good, you'll say, yes, that's a good person. But with Miss Mayberry, since she's in a very clean environment, being good is just the norm. She's not really displaying actual virtue because virtue is convenient at that time. That's just food for thought I want to talk about. But yeah, she committed a murder-suicide, so her saying, oh, I had one bad day. Nah, don't lie to yourself, you're coping. You tried to kill someone, I know you shouldn't assume if someone gets sent to heaven or hell because we don't know. Only God would know. But I think it's safe to say that, yeah, she kind of deserves to go down in hell. Now, Miss Mayberry, she gets a hit to the lady and the family, the cannibal family. And the IMP crew, they use a grimoire provided by Stolas in order to go up there. And something that I don't think a lot of people talk about is dark magic does exist. Or at least did. I have two main citations for this. My first citation being the first book of Samuel, chapter 8:28, verse 11 to 20, when King Saul, with the help of a witch, manages to summon Samuel, who by this time was dead. And my second source being when Moses confronts the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh actually turns staffs into snakes. Like, he actually did that. So yes, dark magic does exist. And you could potentially use it to get someone who's dead to at least communicate with you in the living world. Now, to the extent that dark magic is used, it seems kind of limited because King Samuel was only able to talk to King Saul for a little bit, and King Saul pretty much chewed him out for trying to resurrect him. And Pharaoh, when he turned the rods into snakes, those snakes were defeated by the snake that Moses made with his staff, which was blessed by God. So dark magic is inherently weaker than holy magic. Moving from dark magic to, I guess, the premise of the show, or at least what the show used to be about. The IMP crew being sent up in order to kill people. Demons don't exactly want to kill you exactly, but they do want to lead you to sin, which would make you die forever. You see, if a demon were to kill a righteous person, and the person gets sent up to heaven, they're gonna be resurrected in the end times. So them killing them now ain't gonna do much. But demon would want to lead people into sin, so that their connection with God will be separated, and so that when they do die, they die forever and get sent down to hell. Remember, demons, they're gonna be sent down to hell. They just want to drag us down with them, or drag as many of us down with them as possible. So demons wanting to directly kill people indiscriminately, it's against their goal. Alright, heading on to episode 2, Lululand. And this is the episode where we get a good, proper understanding of Stolas and Octavia. And first I want to say, Stolas doesn't exist. He's never mentioned in the Bible. He's only mentioned in the Legacy of Solomon, which I had my rant about, is not biblical. So Stolas and Octavia, well, Octavia's made up for the show, people know that. But Stolas, he doesn't exist. He doesn't exist. And something about Stolas is that he's demon royalty. He's part of the Ars Goetia. A demon with that status compared to other demons probably doesn't exist. Demons are very instinctual and impulsive creatures. They fought against God, pure good, and like the holiest being, because Lucifer guided them to do so. They're not exactly the most, let's just say, level-headed creatures, and so them bowing down to another demon probably wouldn't happen. My theory to why this is Legion, the hundreds of demons that was possessing a man. Now, one or two demons possessing a human, that is very dangerous. But at the same time, they're not crazy. Someone who's possessed by a demon doesn't appear crazy. A demon is like an everlasting shadow over a person. But with Legion, you have hundreds of demons inside of one person. And the poor guy who had Legion stuck inside him, he was crazy. Like, he was going bonkers, strong enough to break chains and resist arrest for like dozens of guys. That was because the amount of voices in his head was leading him crazy. Now, if Legion, if they did work together properly, they could at least get at least one guy to at least talk to the poor human, at least guide him into your sin. But no, hundreds of demons were trying to possess him at once. And so you probably have different ideas, plans, motives from all those different demons trying to wrestle control over the guy. So that's why he was crazy, because there was like hundreds of different hands yanking and pulling at his mind and soul. But that's just a theory. A biblical theory. I'm sorry. Anyway, moving on. In Lululand, it shows that Stolas has a daughter, Octavia. Demons can't create more demons. Like, they can't have children, but they can't reproduce with humans, as seen in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. If you say my Hazbin Hotel versus Christianity, these are the Nephilim, or giants. Demon reproduction doesn't happen. Demons don't exactly have like reproductive organs, because again, they're spirits. So how they reproduce is human women. I'm probably not gonna go into details of that, but let your imagination go wild. Like, how do you have sex with a spirit? But if a new spirit was created from a demon, I don't exactly know what to categorize that. If they're a blank slate, then they could choose to be good and probably ascend up to heaven, and choose to be bad, they go send down to hell. Or they could be made out of pure evil. Since demons are evil creatures, what they produce would be evil as well. Maybe. Demons creating more demons is just not a thing that's ever mentioned in the Bible, and I don't think it's even possible. But speaking of Stolas and Octavia, the whole premise of Lululand was Stolas wanted to take Octavia to Lululand in order to do some bonding, but he gets distracted with Blitz there. And at the end of the episode, they have a heart-to-heart, showing that Stolas still cares for his daughter despite cheating on Stella. Yeah, demons don't love. Understand that God is love. 1 John chapter 4, verse 8. God is love. Now, demons rejected God. They want to overthrow God and reject everything that God stands for, including love. Demons, no matter what they say, do not love. If they love themselves, that's because of pride. If they love the world, that's because they love the pleasure, not the actual sacrificialness of love itself. And that's what you should understand. Love is sacrificial. But demons, they just want to take and eat and corrupt. They are parasites that want to suck everything good out of the world and corrupt it. That is not love. Alright. Now, shifting to episode 3, Spring Broken. In this episode, the IMP crew get in a spat with Frosco Mayday over a parking spot, and they have a competition to see who, if the IMP crew can kill more people than the Frosco Mayday and her crew could have sex with, then they get to keep the spot. Now, the IMP crew, they're doing this for money, but Frosco Mayday, they're doing it over a parking spot, but at the same time, it does explain why they are doing that. I know that some stories, when it comes to succubi, say that a succubi has sex with mortal men in order to take their seed and to take the life force, kind of replenishing their own life force. Now, that is for a survival thing. But as I mentioned earlier, succubi don't really exist technically, and it goes against what demons do. Demons don't harm humans because they have to, or it's for a greater purpose. It's just so that they can drag us down to hell with them. Demons do not benefit at all from tempting humans, from leading us to sin. They do it because they hate us, and also hate God. So, like I said, demons, they don't need to do this. They don't have to do this. They just want to because they are naturally evil spirits. Moving along in the episode, we can see that Luna and Frosco Mayday and her crew, they have disguises in order to blend in the human realm. While it is mentioned that angels can take the form of men, I don't think there's ever a case where a demon does. A demon doesn't have the same abilities as an angel because an angel has God on their side, while demons don't. So angels, they have more abilities, more power, while a demon is limited. So them disguising as humans in order to lead people to sin, that's not biblical. But I do have to give a little bit of credit. They're tempting humans with immediate pleasure. That's what demons do. They tempt you with something that seems good in the moment, but after you do the thing and you have time to think, you realize, oh no, what have I done? Think premarital sex, murder, lying, cheating. It seems pleasurable and good in the moment, but then when you stop and actually think what you're doing, you realize, oh no, what have I done? This is evil. And that's how demons operate. They lie, they cheat, they manipulate people. They promise something good initially, but it distracts you and leads you away from God, because all the pleasures of the world is temporary. And if you latch yourself onto the temporary pleasures and glory of the world, and you tie your soul to it, the world will eventually die, and along the world, so will your soul. But if you attach yourself to God and stay in God's grace, you will live forever. Because God is the only thing that is eternal. Okay. Episode 4, Cherubs. So, in the opening theme song of Cherubs, it is shown that a cherub can be assigned and hired to protect a human or to try to lead them into living a better life. There's no need for that since everyone already has a guardian angel. And I mean literally everyone. And you don't need to do a spell nor a deal to get one. You just automatically assign one when you're conceived. See Matthew chapter 18, verse 10. And the way that guardian angel would protect you is like trying to, well, honestly, this is the only thing that pop culture usually gets right. The demon and angel on your shoulder. They're like the good and bad thoughts in your head. While a demon tries to lead you into sin, an angel will try to lead you into doing the righteous thing, to lead you away from sin. And every once in a while, depending on the circumstances, a guardian angel may save your life. Though, don't count on them to save you all the time. If you do something stupid, they might not be able to save you, alright? Like, if you strap a bomb to your chest, I'm sorry, you're kind of out of your luck. They are specifically mentioned in the show, they're specifically mentioned being cherubs. These are not cherubs. First off, a cherub is the second highest legion of angels. And to get a grasp as how powerful they are, if the IMP crew were to even exist within a mile of them, they'll get disintegrated. For you see, a cherub is like a guardian. It is like a guardian angel for specific holy artifacts and locations. There was a cherub at the Garden of Eden. There were cherubs defending the Ark of the Covenant. These cherubs are the most protective beings in the known universe, besides God. And that is their job, to protect the most holy of holy. So it would be incorrect to say that these are cherubs. These would be just guardian angels, or just angels. By the way, I feel like they had a huge opportunity to do 4 cherubs instead of 3. You have one cherub that's a human baby, one that's a lion cub, one that's a baby ox, and one that's a eagle chick. Because a cherub has the face of a man, the head of an ox, the head of a lion, and the head of an eagle. And they're all like on different sides of the head, so that they can have eyes everywhere. Yeah, I just feel like they had a little opportunity to do a little reference, but nah. Okay. While we're talking about cherubs and biblically accurate angels, a lot of people have their idea of what an angel looks like shaped by memes. First off, when people say angels in their true forms, they usually imagine like this eldritch horror with a billion eyes and countless wings. That's only limited to actually no angel looks like that. First off, most angels, whenever they do have a form that we can look at, they're just humans. Maybe sometimes with wings. Because understand, the human image is based off God, and God is the most holy entity in everything. And so they would naturally adopt the form of God. And so they would look like humans. Now when people do talk about like higher level angels, the only angel that really looks inhuman would be the thrones, sometimes known as Ophanim. Thrones, they're the wheels within wheels, as shown in the image here. The only complaint I have with this provided image is the seraphim. Seraphim aren't just an eye with a bunch of wings. Seraphim are described as being human-like, but it's just that they have 6 wings. 2 wings to fly, 2 wings to cover their feet, and 2 wings to cover their face. But besides that, this image does showcase what angels actually look like. And I almost forgot. The be not afraid. People take that out of context all the time. When an angel says be not afraid, that's because in most of the time they just show up to someone, say, okay, look, I need you to not be afraid. I'm gonna drop a serious bomb on you, all right? And I need you to listen to this, all right? So don't freak out. That's what they're doing. They're saying be not afraid because they're gonna tell you something very important and something that might, to someone who is unprepared, freak out. That's why they say be not afraid. It's not because they're horrifying, because they're not horrifying. Angels are loving, beautiful beings. I have to say this again and again. the angels are loyal to God, and so they abide to God by God's law, including love. Since God is love and they accept God, they accept love. They are loving beings. They love humanity. They love the world. And they wouldn't want to do harm onto you. They want to protect you and lead you away from sin. The only times where they would actually harm a human being is when it's in very desperate situations or a group of people are just irredeemable and they have to protect someone else. And this complaint goes back to the Lesser Kid Solomon, where people hear something on the internet and just automatically assume it's true. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. Do your actual research. Actually read the Bible if you want to understand what angels are like. Don't just do a few Google searches. Don't just listen to memes. Actually listen. Go to church. So please, don't speak if you don't know. I apologize for my outburst. It's frustrating to see this happen again and again, and people are still doing it. Anyways, let's continue. I'm gonna skip episode 5 because I'm gonna lump it up with an episode later in season 2. So let's get to Truth Seekers. Truth Seekers, you got dorks that managed to catch the IMP crew. Well, Blitz and Moxie initially, and then Millie and Luna tried to break them out. And the whole episode is just an excuse for one giant fight scene. Now, the goal of dorks is to combat the supernatural. You can't exactly fight demons. As much as I want to, like, go into fisticuffs with a demon, you can't do that. The best you can do is resist and expel demons. Basically, literally, the demon cannot enter your body without consent, so just say no. Yeah, so it's basically that. But, so, how do you actually combat demons? Simple. It is through faith in God that men can combat demons. See Acts chapter 19, verse 13 to 16. Because faith in goodness, faith in God, faith in love, that's how you fight against demons. That's how you resist demons, by knowing that good exists and good is worth fighting for. Now, later on in the episode, Stolas gets a wind that Blitz is in trouble, and so he possesses a few dead bodies to create a summoning circle, and so he can summon himself there in order to save the crew. Demon summoning isn't really structuralized. Like, you can't just draw a circle, light a few candles, blah blah blah. In fact, I don't even think you can even summon a demon. A demon doesn't abide by humans. They hate us, remember? So the idea of following orders from us probably disgusts them. Now, could you beckon a demon? Yes. Again, do not try that. Please, do not try that. But it could be possible. And don't expect results. Seriously, don't try it. Okay. Final episode for season 1. There is episode 8, but there's not a whole lot I can say about episode 8. So I'm just going to lump it up with when I talk about Beelzebub later on in the video. Okay, episode 7. Aussies. So, in this episode, Moxie and Millie, they're having their honeymoon. They go to Ozzy's club in order to celebrate the honeymoon. And Blitz invites Stolas so that he can get into the club because it's a couples only thing. And in this episode, we get introduced to our first deadly sin, Asmodeus. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Asmodeus is not mentioned in the Protestant Bible, but he is mentioned in the Catholic Bible, specifically Tobit, the Book of Tobit. Now, the idea that Asmodeus is the king of lust, like the embodiment of lust, isn't really a thing. In the Book of Tobit, he is known for killing Sarah's 7 husbands. Book of Tobit, chapter 3, verse 8, and being wombo comboed by Raphael. Besides that, we don't really get a whole lot about Asmodeus. We know that he's a demon. He can kill people, so he is, I guess, somewhat powerful. Though it's indeterminate as to whether or not he's doing it for a greater plan, like to tempt Sarah or whatever. We just don't know. A lot of these demons, we just don't know. There are some theories as to why Asmodeus did what he did. There are some theories saying that Asmodeus was smitten for Sarah and wanted to be her husband. Others say that he was just evil. I think the funniest theory would be that he was smitten for Sarah, because it will go really bad later on in the show. Because in season 2, Asmodeus says the whole point of lust is consent, which, my brother, you killed 7 men in order to get with a woman. You are a simp. Seriously, that line, lust, consent, like that's the opposite. Well, I'll cover more about lust later. Anyways, so in the Book of Tobit, he kills 7 men, and Raphael gets involved. And Raphael, oh right, I should probably mention. So Raphael is the 3rd archangel. In the Protestant Bible, there's only ever Michael and Gabriel named as archangels. However, in Catholic Bible, there is also Raphael, who makes an appearance in the Book of Tobit. Raphael guides Tobit how to defeat Asmodeus by taking a heart of a fish, burning it, and the smoke would ward off Asmodeus to Egypt, where Raphael wombo-comboed him and bound him in Egypt. See Tobit chapter 8, verse 3. And I'm saying this a lot. Another thing that's very interesting is that Raphael in Tobit chapter 12, verse 14, says that he is one of 7 holy angels. Now we know that he is an archangel because he's actually named. And we know about Gabriel and Michael as being archangels. So we know 3 archangels. But the fact that he says that he's one of 7 holy angels implies that there are 7 archangels. Now the names and identities and purpose of those other 4 archangels, we don't know to this day. And that's both interesting and very frustrating. The Bible does that a lot. It'll drop something really cool and then never elaborate it on ever again. So there are actually 7 archangels. And 7 is a very important number that pops up a lot. You got 7 deadly sins, 7 heavenly virtues, 7 demon princes, 7 archangels. 7 is a very important number. Forgive your friends even if they sinned or did wrong against you 77 times over. 7 is a very important number. Now, to the exact nature, I'm not 100% sure. But the fact 7 is repeated so many times is something I think is noteworthy. Alright, that's everything for Season 1. Now it's time to go into Season 2. There's not a whole lot I could really say about Season 2 since most of the interesting stuff I said was already mentioned in Season 1, but there's still some stuff in Season 2. First off being Stolas being born. I did some calculations, and I estimated his age to be between 35 and 36 at the start of the show, and then either 36 or 37 at the end of the show, as of October 2025. This is weird, because 1, he was born, demons aren't born, they're created by God. I covered that stuff. Also, Paimon doesn't exist. But this section is not really about the theological accuracy of the show. This is just the timeline of the show. Okay, so Season 1, Episode 1, it is stated that it is January 8th in Season 1, Episode 1. Then, in Season 1, Episode 3, it's Spring Broken. So there's a several month gap between Episode 1 and Episode 3, so that it gets to spring. Then, we have a massive jump from Episode 3 to Episode 4, because when they're going around trying to get the old rich guy to be happy with life, they stop by a mall, and there's a mall Santa. Which means that it must be around December. So there was like a 7-9 month jump. And in my notes right here. But in Season 2, Episode 5, it's Unhappy Campers. So we know that it's summer camping. So now it's summer. That's another 5 to 6 month gap. Well, Season 2, Episode 8 and 9, it's October 30th and October 31st, respectively. Then, in Season 2, Episode 12, it's Christmas again. So the show takes place over the span of 2 years. It sure doesn't feel like that. Like, man, they jump massive time gaps in between episodes. Anyway, I'm getting distracted from that. There's not really much I can say about Season 2, Episode 1, Circus, because it's just a lot of exposition. And them rewriting the story in order to make Stolas look better. Now, jumping to Season 2, Episode 4, we get introduced to Androphis is mentioned in Lesser Key of Solomon and nowhere else, so he does not exist. Now, something a little more important about Season 2, Episode 4 is that we get to finally see what angelic metal does. I skipped Season 1, Episode 5 because there wasn't really much. And the one thing interesting about that was the Carmilla Carmine weapon that Stryker had. And so I'm going to lump it up with this episode. In the Helluvaverse, there's angelic metal that can permanently kill a soul, which is called annihilation, the complete eradication of a soul. In this show, it said that holy metal is the only thing that could harm an Archguisha. Problem: holy metal or angelic metal does not exist. Holy metal has been a thing in folklore for a long time, but it's not really doctrine. The belief that silver and gold can ward off evil spirits and demons, that's just from folklore and something that people use in order to like venerate or like give reverence to these resources because they're very rare and very valuable. So over time, people started to associate them with something special. But unfortunately, like an ingot of gold at the end of the day is a rock. It is a rock. There's no magical properties to it. It's just a piece of metal. Hey, editing Mechanite here. I totally forgot to talk about the sacraments and sacramentals. So you see, while there isn't exactly a thing as holy metal, there are holy items and blessings you can use in order to fulfill the same role, as seen in the show. This section, I'm mainly going to be focusing on sacramentals, and save the sacraments for later on in the video. So, what are sacramentals? The sacramentals, think of them as tools used by those in the church in order to conduct blessings or to reinforce your soul. Think of holy water, the rosary, the crucifix, the sign of the cross. And these sacramentals, they help cleanse your soul from sin, but also reinforce your soul from like getting sin. Like it helps you resist sin. Let's focus on holy water, the crucifix, and the sign of the cross. So holy water, that is water that has been blessed by either a priest or a bishop, and is used in order to cleanse the sins away from a person. If you wanted to, you could use this in order to expel demons. That's why whenever a priest blesses a location, they often sprinkle holy water across the place, because it's to help ward off sin and expel demons. And you probably know what a crucifix is. It's the cross with Jesus nailed onto it. Why would a demon fear that? Well, because it resembles Jesus sacrificing himself for the sake of the world, and also his divine authority. Jesus himself wards off demons. But when you show his sacrifice, his love for humanity on the cross, it works extra strong. So even in real life, when you see someone do an exorcism, they often have holy water and a crucifix because they are calling in the divine authority of God. And lastly, for the sacramentals, the sign of the cross. The sign of the cross it's a very simple. You just tap your forehead, your chest, left shoulder, right shoulder, kiss it, and then do a prayer. It's a very simple maneuver. But that itself is a sacramental because it helps reinforce your soul. And these items and acts, they can be used to ward off demons because those acts are holy in themselves. I know I wasn't going to talk about sacraments, but there is one sacrament I want to talk about for this section. And that's the Eucharist. In Catholicism, the Eucharist, it's the little slice of bread, or what looks like a slice of bread, and what looks like a goblet of wine. Those are not bread and wine. That is the literal body of Jesus. The bread, that is the literal body of Jesus. And the goblet of wine, that's actually his blood. And so when people consume that, they are literally eating God. To anyone says that Christianity is boring, no, it's not. You're eating God. But the Eucharist, that is the literal body and blood of Christ. And so demons, they flee whenever that's brought up. And it would have been interesting to see that in the show. I'm imagining a sort of visual gag where dorks, they try to summon a demon in order to figure out what its weakness is and like how do you fight them, like physically. And it goes haywire and the demon ends up killing a whole bunch of dork agents. But then one guy survives. And then he stands up proud. He pulls out a tiny piece of bread, or what looks like a piece of bread, and a little bottle of wine, or at least what looks like a bottle of wine, and goes, "Huzzah!" And the demon, this like monstrous figure, goes, "Ah!" Because that is the literal body and blood of Christ. And they are terrified of him. It's such a missed opportunity for a visual gag. Sure, yes, the Eucharist is a very important, it's very holy, you should respect it. But if you're making a comedy series, at least have some fun with it. Alright, jumping to episode 6 and 7, Oops and Mammon. It's stated that in real life, hell is very hot with being fire. However, in season 1, episode 1, the IMP crew, they were shown to be immune to regular fire. But in Oops, it shows that they can be burnt by hellfire. Now, hellfire, we don't exactly know the exact properties of hellfire, whether or not it burns super hot or super cold, or there's a magical element to it. But I'd like to believe that it's actually cold. Let me explain. While it is true that hellfire, or hell, is hot, it is also a place of death. A place where the warmth of God does not reach you. And so while hellfire is hot, it can act cold. This is heavy speculation. Don't take this as doctrine. Or if you want to object, feel free. I imagine hellfire to being cold. And so this doesn't make Blitz and Viscerally burned victims. They're frostbite victims. Again, this isn't actually biblical. This is just an idea I have. So you could ignore all of that I just said. Anyways, jumping to episode 7. Mammon. We get introduced to our third sin at the time. First was Asmodeus, then it was Beelzebub. Now it's Mammon. Mammon, there's a debate of whether or not he's actually a demon or if he's money or greed. He's mentioned in Matthew's chapter 6, verse 19 to 21, and also 24. He could just be a representation for money, because he who worships money cannot also worship God. This slide, I really don't have a lot to say because it's speculation about whether or not Mammon is or is not a demon. Though I'm not gonna fault the show if they believe that Mammon is a demon. Jumping forward again, episode 8 and episode 10, Moon and Ghost Effers. So in Full Moon, we see cherubs teaming up with dorks in order to fight the IMP crew. It's unlikely that angels would be allowed to enter hell, especially without God's permission. And since they have been excommunicated from heaven, they're probably not going to be able to make contact with God anytime soon. And since they were banished from heaven, that would technically make them demons. Maybe. The nature of which they were kicked out was because they ended up getting the old man killed. But they didn't have any sin, or at least didn't try to do it intentionally. So whether or not there will be demons or angels, there'll probably still be demons since they're excommunicated. Maybe. At this point in the show, we're talking about stuff that is really pushing what theological knowledge we could apply. Since it gets such out of bounds that it's really hard to correlate one thing to another. Season 2, episode 10, where in this episode, Blitz and Millie, they're having to deal with an envy ring demon who can possess them. I said it multiple times, demons do indeed have sway over the world and can indeed possess people. Mark chapter 5, verse 9. But the way that they describe possession isn't really how it is. A demon possession is more like a shadow over someone. They can't really force you to do something. They're just constantly on you, a constant presence, constantly you do sin, to do wrong, to do evil. That's what possession is. And they can guide you into doing sin. It is very, very rare that a demon can just take over your body. And I've said this back with season 1, episode 1. A demon's goal is not to just straight up kill you or to take free will from you. They want you to sin. So a demon taking possession over your body is not because they want you to like kill someone and then the fault will be on you. Not really. Though that's up for discussion. If they were to possess someone, it'll probably be because so they can get access to someone else or do something in the physical world so that they could cause more sin later. Alright, that was pretty much the end of the series. So now I'm gonna go into some more miscellaneous stuff. And this section is gonna be about none other than the 7 deadly sins. I hope you understand I'm tired right now. Anyways, back on topic. So, this section is going to be talking about the 7 deadly sins as presented in the show. Now, the 7 deadly sins are not biblical by nature. However, they were adopted, like the idea of the 7 deadly sins was adopted by the church in order to help teach people more about sin. Like, you categorize them so you can help teach people about sin, like the nature of sin. But over the millennia, I feel like when people try to talk about the 7 deadly sins, they often resort to examples, which I don't blame them. In order to teach someone something, you should use examples. But they use the same examples over and over again that people think that the examples are the sins, instead of trying to understand the nature of the sins. And Helluva Boss does the same thing too. They have examples of the 7 deadly sins, but not their nature. So this section, I'm going to go over each 7 deadly sin, as well as the demon correlated with them, and explain the true nature of the 7 deadly sins. I would also like to mention that the idea that specific demons are associated with specific deadly sins, that's not biblical. Again, Lesakia Solomon. So, let's get started with our first 7 deadly sin, the sin of lust. What is the sin of lust? Now, if you were to ask someone what the sin of lust is, you'll say, oh yeah, like sexual desire is like when you're not supposed to. And the demon associated with the sin of lust is Asmodeus. And I've said this before, we don't have proof that, or concrete evidence to suggest that Asmodeus is like a demon prince of lust. Only mentioned in Book of Tobit, got wombo comboed by Raphael. That's all we know. We don't know a whole lot about Asmodeus. But the sin of lust, in my research, generally, yes, it is like, when you research it, it is the sin of sex. Like animalistic primal lust for sex. But in my research, I don't know why, but I felt like that was too limited in scope. Like it was focused so much on the physical world and not the soul. And so in my research, I kind of saw a pattern reoccurring, as well as examples in the Bible of those who are associated with having committed the sin of lust, such as David. And lust, in the most abstract way and spiritual sense, is corrupt desire, or longing that diverts your attention away from God and everything good. Think the want to do something, the want to do something wrong, the want to sin. That itself is sin. The want to do sin is a sin in itself. Remember, he who looks at a woman with lust has sin in his own heart. Just wanting to do sin is itself a sin. I think that's what the sin of lust truly is in the most deepest and most primal sense. It is want to do something. And lust is often seen as the most benign or entry level sin, because the want to do something is a basis for all other sins. You want to do something, so that makes it wrong. If you accidentally did something wrong and you didn't intend for it, you wouldn't exactly call that a sin. But the moment that you wanted to do something, the moment you wanted to sin, that's when it becomes a sin. And I feel like the sin of lust is that. Now, the example of sin of like adultery, like premarital sex, that's adultery. That's an example of lust, because your heart desired for something and then you did something wrong in order to satiate that lust. But lust isn't just sex. It could be your lust for power, your lust for wealth. There's a reason why the word lust is used for like craving. It is craving something wrong. And I feel like when people use the example of sex, they unintentionally kind of demonize sex. No sex before marriage, obviously. But natural sexual desire is natural. In Genesis, God commanded man and woman to multiply. It is in our nature to have sex. It is hardwired into us. Now, that doesn't mean you could just have sex willy-nilly. No. But it is something that is intrinsic to us. Without sex, the human race would have gone extinct. So, like, wanting sex is not inherently sinful, but what you do about that sexual desire, the way that you handle that, can be sinful. Now, in Catholicism, temptation, like being tempted to do sin, is not a sin. However, wanting to sin, that is a sin. And so you have to, it's a weird balance between temptation and wanting. Like trying to find like the strict definition. So being tempted something, it's like a thought you have. Thought of, hey, what if, oh, I don't know, there's this wallet that someone dropped. I could steal it, or I could return it. That's temptation. That is the option. Like an option appears in your head. Now the sin of lust is, hey, I want to steal that wallet. I want to do something wrong. That is a motive. While temptation is an option. And that's something you really gotta focus on between want to do something and an option that's available. Want to do something, sin. An option, not inherently a sin unless you choose to do the wrong thing. You can argue about this in the comment section below. Shifting to our next sin, gluttony. First off, Beelzebub. We don't know a whole lot about Beelzebub. The demon's mentioned a few times in the Bible, kind of. One of the examples I can recall is when Jesus was, being awesome and doing his miracle work on earth. Some people accused him of having used or like being granted power by Beelzebub in order to do his miracles. Besides that, we don't really get a whole lot. Like I think back in, I want to say not Moses, but like the early Israel time, Beelzebub was mentioned as being like the demon god of a specific city or a specific nation. Again, we just don't know a whole lot, but the name Beelzebub roughly translates to Lord of the Flies or Lord of Dung. Kind of like an entity that rules over rot. It's difficult because we have so little to work off, and we just don't know a whole lot about Beelzebub. Enough about Beelzebub now. So, the sin of gluttony. When people interpret sin of gluttony, they think, oh, lots of food, like indulging yourself a lot of food, drugs, and like heavy metal rocker, like bow chicka bow bow wow wow wow. Think of indulging in excess, and in a sense, that is part of the sin, but it's not the whole picture. Gluttony is tying your happiness, tying your joy, tying your pleasure to worldly sensation. That's a sin of gluttony. Worldly sensation. The sensation of food in your mouth. The sensation of a hot bath. The sensation of music, of adrenaline. It's sensation. But when you tie your sense of joy to that sensation, that's when you get problems starting to come. Because once it reaches a high, when you try to reach that high again, it becomes harder. That's why, like, when you have an addiction to food, drugs, if you take one hit, it's gonna take you high. And then if you want to reach that high again, you have to do double the dose or triple the dose. And that just keeps on climbing until you're pumping yourself with doses in order to reach the same high. Because the world will die. Everything about the world will die one day. It will rot, decay, turn to dust. As well as the sensation of the world. Unless you temper yourself. And it goes all the way back to trying to disconnect yourself from the material world and accepting God. Because God is eternal. God is above the world. Yada yada. I've said this a million times now. That's the sin of gluttony. It is sensation. Tying your joy to sensation. And it becomes a real bad problem when you abandon reason. When you abandon all sense of self-preservation, all sense of restraint, all to get that high. The high of adrenaline, the high of a new food, the high of drugs. That is the sin of gluttony. Going back to the show now. It would have been interesting if Beelzebub is, as presented in the show, she looked like she does in, like, Keshabi. How she is as presented in the image provided. Initially. But as the episode goes on, You see the partygoers. You see that, hey, they take a drink, they're happy. But then they take another drink, they're not as happy. So they had to take another, they had to double dose it. But still not as happy, so they triple, quadruple, again and again and again. And it's not getting them as happy as they once were. And then you see everyone, like, consuming, like partying as hard as they can in order to reach that high. But they simply can't. And then, at the end of the episode, it's revealed that all the food, all the drugs, all the, like, excess that she was providing, they were all rot. They were all unveiled to be rotting, molding, decayed parodies of what they are. Because the world is temporary. Sensation provided by the world is temporary. And it will rot. And if you tie yourself to that world, you will rot as well. Oh, the next sin now. Greed. Honestly, the sin of greed, pretty spot on for the most part. The sin of greed is pretty easy to understand. But, there's a little more to the story. So, when people think of greed, they think someone who wants to get as much money as possible, get as much riches, and hoard it all for themselves. That is close. It's close. Really close. But I would say that the sin of greed is tying yourself to worldly goods, like the physical world itself. You think, oh, I just need this item. I just need a few stacks of cash. I just need a couple $100. I just need this. I just need that. Of things you can see in the physical world. And deriving your happiness and pleasure from that material world. Now, people use money as an example. Now, yes, the money is part of the physical world, and wanting it to an obscene degree is a sin of greed. But it's not limited to just money or wealth. It could be that new iPhone you want. It could be an autograph from a celebrity. It could be a new car. It could be a new motorcycle, a new boat, a new house. Whatever you want from the physical world that you obsess over. That is the sin of greed. So yeah, sin of greed, it's pretty close because that's a sin that a lot of people still don't like to this day. And it's fairly simple compared to the rest. So I don't really have a lot to say about this sin. Besides, it's more than just money. It's about physical stuff. Oh, I should probably mention, Mammon, he's probably not actually a demon. There's arguments about whether or not Mammon is supposed to represent wealth and money, or if he's actually a sin. You can flip a coin on that. We don't really know, so he could be a demon, maybe. He could be representation of money and wealth, maybe. Alright now, the sin of sloth. In Helluva Boss, the sin of sloth is said to be Belphegor. However, as shown, Belphegor takes the form of Baphomet, which is weird, because those are two completely different demons, as mentioned in the Lesser Key of Solomon. Belphegor and Baphomet, I don't think appear in the Bible. Okay, Baphomet, definitely not. Definitely not. Belphegor, I don't recall, but I'm pretty sure he's not. So, having the sin, the Belphegor being the sin of sloth, but then taking the form of Baphomet, that's weird. That's really weird. Oh, by the way, R.I.P. Templars. The story behind that. Okay. I'm gonna get a side tangent. So, Baphomet. The demon was used as an excuse to exterminate the Templars. King Philip had a lot of debt to the Templars, and he wanted a way out. So he framed the Templars by saying, oh, they were actually Satanists, and they were worshipping Baphomet. And because of that, the Templars got disbanded, a lot of them were executed, a lot of them were forced to go on false confessions, under torture, and that was the end of the Templars, pretty much. I think there's still a few knightly orders around, however, they do more charity stuff instead of Daryl's fault! Well, they are doing God's will, but, they're not burning heretics. Okay, you see, this is the difference between you and me. You hate the French because they're French. I hate the French because of what they did to the Templars. We are not the same. Getting back on topic once again. I'm losing my mind here. So, what is the sin of sloth? Well, if you were to ask most people, it will be laziness. Laziness, yeah. Like sleeping in too long, not doing homework, not taking care of yourself. And close but not quite. think of sloth as neglecting what is important. Because someone can still be slothful while being active at the same time. Let me explain. Let's say you have church on Sunday, obviously. But you decide, hey, you know what? Let's do some groceries first. Let's get groceries first. So you go get groceries, and you said, hey, we got groceries here already. Might as well cook dinner. Then you cook dinner. Then you say, hey, since we're already here, we already have the food cooked. Why don't we have a barbecue? Invite the neighbors over. Then you do that. And you do that again and again and again. Next thing you know, you miss church. While still being active, you're indeed doing a lot of physical things, but you are neglecting what is actually important. Spiritual health. Not going to confession, not going to church, not doing your daily prayers. That is sloth. Now, if you have an actual excuse why you couldn't go to church, that's not sloth. But then again, that's you with an excuse. If you don't really have an excuse and you're just procrastinating, that is the sin of sloth. Ooh, the sin of wrath. Now, in the Lesser Key of Solomon, wrath is usually associated with another demon, not Satan. I think I need to refresh myself on that. But in the show, the sin of wrath is associated with Satan. I should probably mention Satan and Lucifer are probably the same person. It's just Lucifer was a name given to him by God in order to describe his beauty. And then Satan is his name they obtained after rebelling against God and, trying to kill everybody. And I should also mention the name Satan stands for opponent or accuser. His name is literally the enemy. Now, Satan does indeed take the form of a dragon, as stated in Revelations chapter 20, verse 3 to 9. But Satan in the Bible, he's more like a liar and tempter than he is this rage-fueled monster. It was Satan who tried to tempt Jesus during his fasting. It was Satan who was tormenting Job in order to make him relinquish his faith in God. It was Satan who tempted Adam and Eve to take a bite from the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. He is inherently a deceiver. He is not a man or being that is all about brute force. What about the sin of wrath? Wrath, when you ask most people, is excessive anger, like lashing out and being consumed by rage. Now, that is a form wrath could take, but I would argue that wrath is unjust anger, injustice, and doing wrong to the innocent. Because being angry is not a sin. There are times where you should be angry. There are times where being angry is the right thing to feel in a specific moment. However, if you get mad at someone who is undeserving of that anger, that is the sin of wrath. Let's say, there's an old woman in front of you in line, and she's old, so she's walking slowly. Then you start to get a little frustrated with her, and you get a little more like, this old lady, she's taking so long. And then you start getting angry until hey lady, get out of the way. That is wrath, because the old woman did not deserve that. She's old. You can't expect her to walk any faster. Now, I do find it interesting that Satan in Mastermind, he was pretty much the judge of the courtroom. Because wrath is contradictory to justice. Let's say someone does do something wrong, and you are upset about them. Let's say someone stole, your phone, and you're justifiably mad at them. Would it then be just to shoot them in the face? Of course not. It doesn't matter how angry you got, stealing a phone is not worth killing someone over. That is wrath. Doing too much punishment, being so unjustly and excessively angry at someone, or being too brutal on someone for an act they either could not control or an act that is far less than the punishment is warranting. Well, that is wrath. Another side tangent. I feel like there was another missed opportunity with Satan. The joke with Satan was that he has anger issues, obviously, wrath, but then he has a little imp therapist by his side in order to try to calm him down. But the therapist, he's using zodiacs and astrology in order to help keep him calm, and it's working. But I wanted just a few more details. Imagine if the first time that we saw Satan get angry, he gets really angry, and the lava or like the patterns on his scales, they start to grow brighter. They start to grow brighter. They start to spread. He starts to heat up. He starts to get hotter. And the courtroom around him, it starts to shake. And pieces of the ceiling start to collapse, showing that, hey, the wrath, he's getting, like Satan, he's getting so angry that it is affecting the physical world around them. And it might harm those around him. And then that's when you have the little imp dude come down, showing how, hey, Satan, he is extremely powerful. Him just getting mad could actually kill people. But then at the same time, he's being calmed down by a little tiny imp using astrology and zodiac signs to help calm him down. That would have been funny. Anyway, well, at least that's how I would have done the joke. Just show how, hey, there is a consequence to him getting angry. And the only thing protecting everyone is this one imp dude. Next up, the sin of envy. The sin of envy, as represented in Helluva Boss, is personified by Leviathan. And one thing I do have to give the show credit for, Leviathan does indeed have multiple heads. And Leviathan should be the only one that should actually be in hell, because Leviathan's dead. Yeah, see Psalms chapter 74, verse 14. Yeah, God killed him. A few theories I have about Leviathan. A theory I have with Leviathan is that Leviathan, he's meant to represent like the most physically powerful, like the physical prime that the world has to offer in the water. So in the Book of Jobs, when Jobs like master resists temptation and God comes down to talk to him, he mentions Behemoth and Leviathan. And there's a theory I've heard. I'm not saying this is doctrine, but it is a theory that there was supposed to be another great creature. And I've heard that creature was mentioned, like, has been, like, stories of the creature as told well before Jesus' time. I think, like, 2000 BC, maybe even 3000. I'm a little fuzzy about it. But this third creature was a great beast that could fly. And so, there's like a triad of these mighty beasts. You have Behemoth, master of land, grazer of the field. Then you have Behemoth, the great serpent of the sea, so large and powerful he is like a hurricane. And then you have this third creature, king of the sky, terror of the night. But the third creature, that's more of a theory, and like really old sources, like really, really old. So it's not exactly biblical. But I want to mention that because I have a theory to the nature of Leviathan. And that Leviathan is so big that he needs to stay in the water. He needs to stay in the water or else his body would collapse under its own weight. And it's also mentioned in the Book of Jobs that Leviathan breathes fire. Now, some people have theorized that this fire that he breathes is like a gateway to hell itself. Which, okay, that's a very fantastical way of seeing it, but you do you. But I don't think that is. I think that Leviathan, he is so unbelievably big that he generates so much internal body heat that when he breathes, like he breathes in air, his body temperature heats that air that he just breathes up, and then when he exhales it, it is like fire. That's how big he is. He generates so much heat that he is a furnace. And that's why he is a sea serpent. He needs to stay in the water. He needs to stay in the water to stay cool. Because if he exits the water, he's going to burn up from just how much heat he's generating. And the idea that him breathing fire, that may have been an inspiration for why we believe dragons, as interpreted nowadays, breathes fire. Because Leviathan is pretty much what was a living dragon. And that leads to another point I had. I forgot to mention. When it comes to Satan, Satan took the form of a dragon. And I believe the reason that dragon was selected was because dragons are the most powerful beings the world could theoretically come up with. A dragon could walk on land, fly in the sky, dive into the ocean, and breathe fire. A dragon, it is essentially the greatest life form the earth could provide, and most powerful. but not the holiest, nor greatest, that the universe could create. For God far surpasses that of the dragon. And this comes in my theory that the reason why Lucifer took the form of a dragon when he tried to rebel and became Satan was because he wasn't thinking of the holiness. He wasn't thinking of God's glory. He wasn't thinking of righteousness, goodness itself. He was thinking about the physical world. And in trying to rebel, he took a form that he knew was the strongest thing that the world could create, that being a dragon. But unfortunately, a dragon is only as strong as the world can allow it. And God is above the world. He is stronger than the world. And so, upon taking the form of a dragon, Satan was doomed to fail. But that's just a theory. Now, you may have noticed how I kept on saying him or it. That's because Leviathan is only ever referred to either as a him or it, depending on what translation of the Bible you're using. So, the fact that Leviathan is depicted as a woman here implies either two things. Either one, gender swap, it's Joe, obviously. Or two, Leviathan is trans. And if Leviathan is trans, good for him. Heading back to the sin of envy. Envy is a weird emotion that people have. And I guess how people see it nowadays is kind of close to what it actually is. It's hatred towards another's fortune, another's joy, and wanting misfortune without just cause. It is resentment for another person for having a nicer house, a nicer social life, a nicer car, whatever. And instead of feeling joy for them, you get envious. You wanted that. Why couldn't you get that? And then you start to hate the other person for the joy that they are having. And this sin is very closely linked to the sin of pride. Because one of the ways the sin of envy could manifest is, why couldn't I have what he has? Why couldn't I be as famous as him? It is self-centered in a way, but at the same time not quite, because the sin of envy can still manifest as hatred for another's joy, without necessarily involving your own self in the situation. Now, the last and deadliest sin, the sin of pride. When those who think of the sin of pride, they think vanity, a golden statue of yourself. You speaking of your own tasks and great deeds for hours on end to guests up from across the lands. A golden crown placed upon your head. That is close but not quite. The sin of pride is deemed the worst and deadly sin, for it prevents you from bowing to God. Think of it like this. Let's say you did something wrong. You killed a man, but you refuse to accept it. You say, well, it's not my fault. He did something horrendous. I was just bringing justice. You're lying to yourself. I am a good man. I am a good man in heart. I don't need to go to confession. I have never sinned in my life. You're lying to yourself. I am the only good, honest man in this world. Across 8 billion lives, I alone am the only true holy one. You're lying to yourself. The sin of pride blinds you from your own faults. Because one of the key notions that you must understand is that humans are inherently sinful creatures. We are inherently cruel creatures. We are inherently evil creatures. And we must accept that. You must accept, yes, you have done something wrong. You are sinful in nature. And that the only person who can help you is God. And the way that you accept God's help is by bowing down to his laws. The sin of pride, when it takes root, is very difficult to deal with. Because it is inherently defensive of itself. It wants to deep down, it wants to root itself in your soul. Dig deeper and deeper, using you as a shield, while corrupting you from the inside out. Because it knows that admission of fault, confession, understanding, Yes, I am a sinner, and I have sinned, is what will destroy it. And so it does everything it can to hide, even blinding itself to hide. Now Lucifer, he is adequately known for being a representation for the sin of pride. For it was he who thought he was so beautiful, so glorious, that he should overthrow God and proclaim himself the being above all. But he was not. And through that sin, he fell. And the sin of pride is the root for all other sins. Why should I temper my desire for beautiful women? Why should I reject this glorious food that God has given me? Why should I not have this nice house? Why should I not have this nice truck? Why should I reject a nice nap? Why should I not unleash my wrath upon my enemies? Why should I have to deal with another man's fortune? The sin of pride leads to all other sin. For if you believe that you should be allowed to sin, that is the sin of pride. And the way that you deal with the sin of pride is humility. Understand, you are a sinner. You have sinned, and you must face it with sober judgment. Whew, alright, we're almost done. Alright, so that was pretty much everything I had to say about Helluva Boss. But you may be wondering, wait, we're covering Hazbin Hotel again? That's right! You see, when I did the Hazbin Hotel versus Christianity video, I was viewing that through the lens of a Protestant. Mainly because, based off evidence as presented in the show, we couldn't get a lot of strong, concrete details as to what denomination they were working with. But since Helluva Boss and Hazbin Hotel take place in the same world, and through evidence found in Helluva Boss, we concluded that the world is based off Catholicism, I'm going to go ahead and do a bonus feature, criticizing Hazbin Hotel through the lens of a Catholic. First things first, not all sins are equally bad. You see, there's a thing called mortal sin and venial sin. Think of venial sin as flaws in one's character. And these are sins that are, well, yes, still morally wrong. They're not like you murder someone. Here's an example. So let's say there's a kid, and his mother tells him to brush his teeth. But the kid got distracted, didn't brush his teeth. And when the mother asks him, hey, did you brush your teeth? He lies, he tells a white lie, he says, yes. Does that kid deserve to go to hell? No, he's a kid. And also, it was a very, small lie. And that is what a venial sin is. Think of it as a lesser sin. It's still a wrongdoing, but you're not exactly going to go to hell for it. Now, venial sin, they damage your connection with God. They make it slightly weaker. While a mortal sin completely cuts it off. You're out of God's grace if you commit a mortal sin. Now, what makes a mortal sin so evil and so wrong is that it's one, an active wrongdoing. You're actively doing something wrong. Two, you have full knowledge and consciousness of what you're doing. It was an accident. You know what was going to happen. And three, you had full willingness to do so. You weren't forced to do it. You could have just not do it. But if you're forced to do it, then it won't be as bad. If you were kidnapped and you were forced to do a trolley problem, let 5 people die, let 1 live, or pull the lever, let 1 die, let 5 live. At the end of the day, you're still technically killing someone. But if you pull the lever, you're not exactly in a situation where, hey, you're morally wrong for pulling the lever. And I bring this up because Hazbin Hotel, it wants to lump up people who did little minor things wrong on Earth, along with people who are cannibals, and think that those are somehow comparable, at least by the show's judgment of who goes to hell. The Weeaboo girl, found in the Helluva Boss short, she probably committed a few venial sins. We don't have a strong profile on her. And yes, she was very smitten for Blitz because demon and whatnot. But I wouldn't say she's really deserving of hell. It's hard to say. Maybe she could, I don't know. But a venial sin is lesser sin. She didn't seem like a bad person inherently. Well, everyone's a bad person, but she wasn't explicitly a bad person. Now the cannibal mom. Oh yeah, she committed lots of moral sins. She's going to hell. And this brings some conundrums with the morality of Hazbin Hotel, because it was this thing, oh, everyone in hell went down there for similar reasons, or at least comparable morality wise, similar reasons. When in reality, no. The people who go down to hell, they did something wrong on earth. Like, they knew what they were doing was wrong, and yet they still did it. Because in hell, there are no innocent people. Now, a venial sin. Let's say you committed a few venial sins on earth. You were still faithful. You were still a faithful person. You still tried to do the right thing, but you slipped up here and there. If you died with some venial sins still attached to you, you go to purgatory. This is something that frustrates me when people use purgatory as a synonym for hell. It's not hell. Stop saying it. It's not divine punishment. Purgatory is a cleansing ground for those who are still faithful but still have venial sin connected to them. You see, everyone has a little bit of sin to them. Everyone. We are inherently sinful creatures. So it'll be obvious that after we die, we may have a tiny bit of sin connected to us. Now, purgatory is where we go to cleanse the soul. Now, the specifics as to what purgatory is like, we don't know. It is a cleansing ground, and it may not be comfortable there, but it's not punishment. Think of it as during your time in prison, or doing community service. Yes, is it somewhat of a punishment for what you did on earth? In a sense. But after you get through purgatory, you go to heaven. And that's the thing. Purgatory is not eternal. It's not eternal punishment. It is just temporary uncomfortableness in order to cleanse yourself of sin, make you a more righteous person, so that once you get through, you'll be able to go to heaven. Now, the fact that Hazbin Hotel does not mention purgatory at all is weird, because one, it would have given heaven a stronger argument in the courtroom, showing how, hey, yes, we understand not everyone's perfect, but there are people who are willing to be better versus those who do not want to be better. Those who are willing to be better, they go through purgatory, they do their time, then they go to heaven. While those who do not want to be better, they just go straight to hell. That would have been an interesting argument to bring up, saying how, yes, we understand there's a difference. But the thing is, those who are in hell just don't want to improve themselves. Ooh, okay, now this one's gonna be a little controversial. So, limbo. It's not doctrine. It's not doctrine at all. But at the same time, it's not exactly heretical. You see, there are some theories that the idea that some people, let's say those who live, let's say, normal lives, who weren't evil, but they weren't good people either. They just were. This would be the place where they would eventually go to when they die. Limbo is technically part of hell, but since they were relatively neutral on Earth, they don't get the same punishment or even get punished when they die. But at the same time, they don't go up to heaven. So they won't be punished, but they won't get rewarded either. It's just the medium place. Lukewarm, as it were. Now, there's theorized about two different parts of limbo. One being the limbo of the fathers. This was for the hell. Well, this was the limbo for those who were righteous before Christ died on the cross. Because after Christ died on the cross, redemption was finally possible. And the limbo of the fathers was where the righteous remained until Christ died, descended to hell. He picked everyone up from that part and then carried them up to heaven. Now, the limbo of the infants, that's a little more controversial. Because, as the name implies, the limbo of infants is a place where the kids or infants who died but had not sinned, because, babies, go when they die. And the reason why they couldn't go up to heaven is because of the original sin. In Catholicism, there's a thing called original sin. This is the sin that Adam and Eve committed back in the Garden of Eden. Hence, original sin. And because of that sin, everyone has a little bit of evil in them. Hence why we're all down here on earth instead of in heaven right now. And the limbo of infants is what happens when a newborn is created. They're born, but they die before they can get their first baptism. So they couldn't be cleansed of original sin. Now, this is controversial because even today, the Catholic Church, they're wondering, hey, is this truly just? Does this place actually exist? Because, hey, let's say the father of the child wanted to get the kid baptized, but they couldn't because the kid died before they could. Is that still just? And hence, this is why I'm bringing up, this is not doctrine at all in the Catholic Church. It's only a theory. But it's an idea that's been thrown around in order to understand hell and what sin is. Now, the Hazbin Hotel, as in the establishment itself, their goal, get sinners to be redeemed, make them better people so that heaven will accept them so they can live in paradise. The way that redemption, like forgiveness, works in Catholicism, there are, in a sense, two parts. One is necessary and one is not inherently necessary, but is like pushed. One, it does truly start with sorry. If you did something wrong and you have to truly feel sorry for what you did. You have to understand, hey, what I did was wrong. I shouldn't have done it, and I am truly sorry. That's step one. Two, you should own up to it. Say, yes, what I did on earth, I'm going to confess to a priest, or I'm going to go to the confession and admit what I did wrong and why I did it, and then I'm truly sorry, and I'm going to ask for forgiveness. Now, this is why confession in Catholicism is so important, because the confessional booth is where God himself comes down to forgive you. That's right. In Catholicism, when you're going through confession and you stand there before the priest and you do a few prayers, that priest literally becomes Jesus. I'm not joking. When you're confessing to a priest, you're actually confessing to God himself. It's just that the priest is being a conduit for God. Because you have to remember, if God were to show his true form to you, you'll just explode. Now, after you confess to God what you have done, the priest, through the wisdom of God, blessed to him, he would direct you to do a penance. A penance is making right what you have done wrong. If it's only a thing that you have internalized, like, oh, you just hate that one guy, you'll probably do a few prayers and make sure you go to church. But penance varies depending on the severity of what you have done. In extreme cases, you might be forced to fast. You might have to just eat like only bread and water for a week, or maybe 2 weeks. It honestly depends just how severely you sin. But after which, you are supposed to repent. Repenting is having a true change of heart. Now, this is the most difficult part because you're most likely going to fail. It is in our nature to fail. But that should not deter you from trying to repent. Let's say you go to confession. Let's say you sinned, you go to confession, you admit what you did wrong, and you feel bad for what you did. But then next week, you come back again and confess for the same sin you just committed the week prior. You should not be deterred from confessing for the same sin twice. In fact, it's actually encouraged. Because it is in our nature to sin. We are doomed to fail as a species. But we can try to fight and be better people. No matter how many times you stumble, no matter how many times you fail, you gotta keep on trying. And that's what matters most. As long as you understand, yes, I should be better. I should be doing more. And that's the most important part. Trying. I bring this up because in Hazbin Hotel, they have half of it down. Like, yes, it truly starts with sorry. But they fail to admit to, hey, admitting when you did wrong. Imagine an episode where the characters, they go about like their deepest regrets. Saying like, hey, I did this when I was alive. Hey, I did that when I was alive. And admitting, yes, what I did something wrong on Earth. And I feel sorry for doing it. And then after that, they should be doing a penance. Now, I should mention, penance is not required for forgiveness. Simply asking God for forgiveness, he will do. However, if a penance is delivered to you. Like, hey, do 10 Hail Marys, let's say. You should do the 10 Hail Marys because failing to do the penance can itself be a sin. Because it shows, hey, I'm not going to try to make right for what I've done wrong. So yes, you should atone for what you did. So let's say, for example, Serpentius. Let's say his sin was, hey, I did not stand up when I saw something wrong. Like, I saw a murderer and I didn't do anything to stop him. His penance would be, well, in a more thematic sense. I wouldn't know what a priest would say and understand for thematic sake. Let's say in the show, Serpentius would stand up to a bully and maybe save someone's life, showing, hey, I couldn't save the other person then, so let me save you now. That's penance, making right what you've done wrong. And if you caught what I said about 10 Hail Marys, Holy Mary, Mother of God. In Catholicism, Mary is a very important figure because, one, she is the Mother of God. The Father blessed Mary with the fruit of Jesus, and she became the Mother of God. And in doing so, she technically became the Queen of Heaven. Now, I should clarify, she's not a god. She's still human. It's just that, like, her position in heaven would be the Queen of Heaven. But God still holds, like, absolute supreme authority. Now, what made Mary so special? Two things. One, immaculate conception. Unlike everyone else on earth, Adam, Eve, they were born without sin because they weren't introduced to sin yet. Jesus was born without sin because Mary was also born without sin. That's right. In Catholicism, Mary was born without original sin. And what's even crazier is that she went her entire life without sinning. Throughout her entire life, she was completely sinless. She was truly, honestly faithful to the Lord. And for that, she became the Mother of God. Oh, and a fun fact. In most Protestant denominations, they say that Mary, after having Jesus, had several other kids. In Catholicism, she didn't have other kids. The only child she had was Jesus. The other kids, like Jesus' brother and cousins, they were supposedly from a previous marriage that Joseph had. Because if you have a kid, you are, in a sense, tied to the world because you have an emotional attachment to someone else that is of this world. While Mary, she didn't have any other kids, only Jesus. So she didn't exactly have any ties to the world. And you know what? It would have been interesting to see Mary. Because as the Queen of Heaven, she'll have a lot of respect. A lot of angels sing her songs. We have prayers about her. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and to the hour of our death. Amen. And it would have been interesting to see that. Let's say, I don't know, in the show, God's on vacation. Because, you know, Earth is kind of a mess right now, so he wants to take a break, you know, just, hey, I just want to take 5 minutes off. And then he'll show up back in like 1,000 years. You could say, hey, since Mary, Queen of Heaven, is there, she could be like a substitute. Again, this is just for the show. I'm not saying this is like theologically possible, because God, he's like omnipotent. He could do whatever he wants, but it would be interesting to see Mary there. Imagine the courtroom, they have Mary there as like the high judge. And she does possess a lot of love, not just for God, not just for heaven, but for all life. Why do you think people pray to her? Also, I should mention, people do not pray to saints as a form of worship. Think of praying to saints as like a messenger in between. You could directly pray to God, but you could also pray to a saint who could deliver that message to God. This kind of makes like a prayer a little stronger, kind of. The specifics are a little weird, but in Catholicism, they do not worship saints. And you should not worship Mary, because Mary is still human. Sure, she may be the Mother of God and Queen of Heaven, but you shouldn't worship her. The only being you should worship is God. Anyways, I just thought it would have been interesting to see Mary in the show. So, I do not trust them to do her justice. I really don't. They're probably going to do something horrendous to make her a parody of herself. And lastly, Peter and the church. When I first found out that St. Peter was going to be in Hazbin Hotel, I kind of squealed like a like a girl. Like, ah, yay, St. Peter! Because St. Peter was actually the very first pope. St. Peter was given the keys to heaven, as stated in Matthew chapter 16, verse 19. And that key is the church. Because the church is like how God applies the authority on earth. The church is supposed to be an extension of God's will and an extension of heaven. It is like a little slice of heaven on earth. And the objective of the church is to guide people towards heaven. Teach them, teach them right and wrong. Teach them justice. Teach them order. And the church should expand. Why do you think when we discovered the New World, there were so many preachers trying to go to cross the Atlantic in order to preach the word of God? Because they wanted to share the love of God with the people of the New World. But you may be questioning, okay, what about people in places where the church did not exist then? What about people, let's say in 1182, and they lived, let's say in Latin America? What would happen to them if they didn't know about Jesus? Were they doomed to go to hell? No, of course not. Because there's a thing called natural law. Natural law is the sense that humans know intrinsically right and wrong. It is a natural sense of right and wrong. It is a moral compass within everyone, and I mean everyone, to understand right and wrong. And so even if you don't know about Jesus, if you don't know about the church, you'll still know if something's right and wrong because you can feel it in your heart. And so, let's say, going back to the Latin American guy in 1106, he could live a good, righteous life. He could understand, hey, it's bad to be a bully. Hey, it's good to forgive people. Hey, it's good to be kind, to love. And if he's truly faithful to those principles, he could go to heaven. And the church isn't just important for like the sake of spreading the word. They do have a lot of important tasks to do on earth. Hence, the sacraments. The sacraments are authority given to the church by Jesus himself. Think of baptism, confession, the Eucharist, marriage. Those are sacraments. It is through the church that a marriage can be proper. And a priest, he, through the power of God, can turn bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. And it is a priest who becomes Jesus when you confess to him. Because you need to confess to God. And he is there as a conduit for God. And the church is important because it helps guide us away from sin and towards God. Something that not just Hazbin Hotel, but Helluva Boss really ignore is, okay, why are people going to hell? In Hazbin Hotel, they state that there's an overpopulation problem in hell. And no matter how hard they try to exterminate, there's just too many people falling down to hell. So how about you focus on reducing the amount of people going to hell? Because it's obvious that in Hazbin Hotel, heaven and hell, they're very interactive with Earth, with people who are alive. So it would have been interesting to see, let's say, hey, the church is struggling on Earth. People aren't believing in God no more. And sin is beginning to spread on Earth, thus making the overpopulation problem in hell even worse. That would have been something to address in Hazbin Hotel. And a proposal that Charlie could have said was, hey, how about I help you boost the church on Earth? Because the best way to deal with an illness is to prevent someone from being sick in the first place. So, in order to prevent an overpopulation problem, you should stop people from falling to hell. That way, Charlie doesn't have to worry about the exterminations going down to kill her people, and instead lead people who are still alive up to heaven. And I'm sure heaven would agree with that proposal. It makes it more nuanced. It makes it more considerate of the other side. And maybe a little bit of a gray zone, seeing how, hey, they understand hell is having more influence on Earth. Hell is being a danger not just to the afterlife, but to life still alive. Nuance, people, nuance. Alright, we're finally done. What are my closing statements? I'm just done with the shows. Hazbin Hotel, Helluva Boss, I'm just done with them. They are so frustrating to talk about because for everything they get right, they do something wrong. And it's so frustrating. And the fact is, me talking about the shows are just making the problem worse. By drawing attention to the shows, it boosts the shows in the algorithm and makes it more popular. So what I'm doing could be like make the situation worse. So after this video, I'm just not gonna talk about the shows. I just don't want to. I do not like the shows. Okay. By the time you're watching this, Hazbin Hotel season 2 is coming out, and I might see it. I have a sister who has an Amazon Prime account, and she shares it with me, so it's not like they're gonna get a new subscription. But I'm still wondering whether or not I should watch it because I don't like the show. I really don't like the show, and I truly don't want to watch the show. But knowing that so many people are fans of the show and that it's influencing people's views on the world, it's good to understand what their views are being shaped around. I'm tired. My throat's burnt. Like those recording session I'm doing, it took me like I've been doing like 2 hours of talking, and I don't know how much I'm gonna trim out of this. But my throat hurts right now. I'm really tired, guys. I'm really tired. But we should keep fighting a good fight. Even if fighting a good fight is just not engaging with the enemy. That's all I have to say now. May God be with you.